All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Well, the Los Angeles Lakers and their roller coaster of a season continued last night with a kind of a beatdown of the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that they've had their number all year, beating them 3 times. Even the time they lost, they jumped them early and then just kind of ran out of gas at the tail end of a long road trip. This is a team they've had a lot of success against. But I think it's a good time for us to kind of zoom out. Not just, we're going to take a look at last night's game, but also zoom out and take a look at the Lakers' big picture. And obviously, our go-to Lakers guy is Jovan Buha, who covers the Lakers for The Athletic. I want to start with the Thunder game, though, Jovan. So what were your major takeaways from the Lakers delivering a beatdown to the number one seed in the Western Conference, or at least the team that was the number one seed before said beatdown?
My major takeaway is that this is a great matchup for the Lakers. And if these two teams faced off today, I would pick the Lakers in a 7-game series. And I think the Lakers, they wouldn't go as far as to say they want to play the Thunder or they think they would beat the Thunder. But there was a lot of talk last night in terms of confidence against most of the West. I think there's an obvious exception there in Denver and them, having beaten the Lakers 8 straight times. But aside from Denver, the Lakers have fared pretty well against the rest of the West, particularly the top of the West. 3-1 against the Thunder, 3-1 against the Clippers, 0-2 against the Timberwolves. But one of those games ended in controversial fashion. Remember the LeBron 3 that was ruled a 2. And then the other game, LeBron did not play in, and the Lakers lost a semi-close game. But both games are also in Minnesota, so the Lakers have a couple more matchups with Minnesota in LA. But looking at the top of the West right now, like the Lakers are feeling confident about how they match up with at least 2 of the 4, if not 3, but particularly OKC. Because if you look at the way that these matchups have gone, the Lakers have won the rebounding battle in 3 of the 4 games. And we know how important that is for this group. Sometimes it is as simple as just looking at, did they win the rebounding battle or not? Because when they're getting out rebounded, because of the math game, sometimes it's just too much of a difference there for them to make up. But points in the paint, AD just dominates Chet. He's outplayed him in all 4 games and thoroughly outplayed him in 3 of the 4. But to me, there's moments where AD is looking like prime Shaq against this Thunder front line just because they're so small and he's just so physically overwhelming for them. So the fact that the Thunder don't really have anybody to bother LeBron or bother AD and the success that the Lakers have had head to head with both teams being relatively healthy and whole. I know the Thunder didn't have Jalen Williams last night. Lakers, of course, didn't have Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Christian Wood. But for the most part, aside from the first matchup when the Lakers were missing like half the rotation, and it was at the end of the road trip, as you noted, like these two teams have been relatively whole, and it just looked like a really good matchup for the Lakers. So I think the Lakers do have to get lucky in terms of seeding and I mean making the playoffs in the first place. But if they do end up matching up with OKC in a 1-8 or a 2-7 or somehow a 3-6, if the Lakers can continue going on a run here, I think I would pick the Lakers in about 6 games in that series.
Yeah, this is a matchup I've had circled for the Lakers as one that I believe they would win all season. As a matter of fact, those of you guys who've been listening to the show for a while probably heard of me and Sam Vecini getting an argument about this on the show a couple of weeks ago. I did send him a friendly text last night with a little bit of I told him I needed to take a victory lap now just in case they got eliminated in the play-in tournament and they never actually made it to that point. But it really is this simple to me. Like,
it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Which is very not just possible, like it's kind of somewhat sort of like a coin flip, like it's a real chance that might happen. It's just really difficult to go on the road and win 2 games, and that's the predicament they might be in, especially if they struggle through this tough part of their schedule here. But anyway, as it pertains to the Thunder, the way I kept looking at it is that especially when you get into a playoff environment and the games gets more physical, and by the way, officials around the league have been calling less fouls as of late. And I think Tom Haberstrode has done a little bit of a breakdown on this, but defensive ratings around the league are plummeting as of late. And there's a lot. We had another knockdown, drag out fist fight of a game between the Timberwolves and the Clippers the other night. I think it was the first game all season where both teams scored in the 80s. And so we're kind of getting some playoff style officiating earlier than usual this year. And like, it really comes down to this. There's so much talk about the perimeter defense and like whether or not the Lakers could guard a team like Oklahoma City, who just brings so much ball handling to the table. And my counterpoint to that was, Yes, that's an issue. That's their matchup weakness, especially with Jared Vanderbilt out. But that particular front line doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of dealing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And even watching that game last night, there was a huge stark difference in just the shot profile for both teams. The Lakers took 25 fewer jump shots in that game than the Oklahoma City Thunder did. And like, you'd see it. It'd be like Shai would work into the lane and miss a mid-range pull-up, or Jalen Williams would work into the lane and miss a mid-range pull-up, and they'd run out the other end, and AD would slip a ball screen and he'd be dunking it, or LeBron would bully his way to the rim and miss and then get an offensive rebound put back, or they'd be running out and transition it. Like the Lakers just play a brand of basketball that is very physically aggressive. They have been second in points in the paint scored per game in the entire NBA for the entire season. And so a lot of times, like we always look at like one side of the matchup without countering with the other side of the matchup. And in this particular case, like as it turned out, and this is where I got to credit the Laker guards, Austin Reeves, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Austin Reeves, for the record, has been defending, in my opinion, really well for a little while now. He's been like the one guy of the skill players for the Lakers who's been really working his butt off, trying to make stuff happen, not just defensively, but on the defensive glass, like flying around. And then you got a really good Spencer Dinwiddie point of attack game, just fighting over the top of screens and beating guys to spots. I thought D'Angelo Russell was really good in help situations last night. Taurean Prince had one of his better defensive games of the season. And so basically, the Lakers were able to scale up their perimeter defense through effort and execution and counter a lot of what the Thunder do. And the Thunder just physically cannot scale up their interior defense to deal with what the Lakers bring to the table. And that really is what it comes down to me in that particular matchup. When push comes to shove, the Lakers are more equipped to inflict their advantages on the Thunder than the Thunder are capable of inflicting their advantages on the Lakers. Now, I don't want to sit here and act like it wouldn't be a toss-up. It certainly would. The home court advantage piece would be tough too. Going to Oklahoma City, that arena would be raucous. It would be a really, really tough matchup. But I just think that the Lakers would be able to get one in OKC, and I think they do well at home, just physically overwhelming that particular team. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. I was looking at NBA futures this morning. The Golden State Warriors are plus 5,500 right now on DraftKings to win the title. So if you believe in them, that's a big number. And Denver, I have Denver as my championship favorite, and they're still the second best odds on DraftKings right now at plus 450. So lots of good NBA bets to look at over the course of the end of the season. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. The crown is yours. One of the things that I want to do today, so obviously we talked about Thunder Lakers last night. I want to take a quick beat to take a look at some of the kind of intel related stuff with the Lakers as it pertains to their injuries, guys being out, and then also just some of the fallout from that Denver game. Then what we're going to do, which will be fun at the end of the show, we're going to go line by line through the Western Conference and talk about the Lakers matched up with those specific teams and what we would expect to see in a series there. So for starters, let's go rapid fire through the injuries. Any update on Jared Vanderbilt?
Yes, I did hear recently, and this goes back to the Golden State game coming out of the All-Star break, that there is increased optimism that he is going to return this season and he won't need season-ending surgery. I've since talked to some additional people, and they've confirmed that. Now, as to the matter of when he returns, I think that's unclear with all three injured players for the Lakers right now, but it does see, I mean, he's been out of the boot now for a couple games. Last night, there was a video from the huddle where he was bouncing up and down and working with one of the strength and conditioning coaches. And you think for a guy with a foot injury, bouncing up and down, just jumping on it, that I'm not a doctor, but that seems to be a pretty good sign. So I asked Darvin Ham yesterday pregame about Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt. We're at about the 10-week mark for Gabe. He was supposed to be reevaluated at 8 weeks. We're at the 4-week mark for Vando. He was supposed to be evaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. And Darvin said there should be an update next week. with the reevaluation process. So it does seem like we'll have a little bit more clarity on both players next week. But as for Vando, the chatter that I've been hearing recently has been trending in a positive direction of still unclear if it's a couple weeks from now or closer to 4 weeks from now. But it does seem like the Lakers are expecting him to be back before the end of the regular season.
Yeah. And like, as far as Vando goes, to me, this Laker team has a near 0% chance of winning the title without Jared Vanderbilt, like near zero. It would require just a plethora of good matchup luck and good teams getting injured or upset, knocked out, things like that. I don't think they can win without him. He's their one starting caliber perimeter defender on the roster. I don't think Cam Reddish is the answer there. I don't even think Max Christie is the answer there, although a lot of Laker fans do. So, like, to me, it that even matters way more than seeding. Like, to me, there's no point in rushing him back because, getting the 8th seed, but Jared Vanderbilt having a setback is worthless because from there they have no chance without Jared. So, like, it's March 5th. If he takes another solid 2 weeks before he starts ramping up, and if he can just play in like 2 or 3 regular season games before he gets back, especially since offensive rhythm is less of a deal with him, especially now that they're using him more as a cutter, it's more important just for him to be able to play hard defensively without dealing with an issue with the foot. A guy that's been really important to the Lakers this year, especially as they've tried to go bigger, one of the subplots as they've been 17-10 since January 7th, this recent stretch. They've been a really good offense in that stretch. They've been the 6th best offense in the league, but they have struggled in the rebounding side of things. I want to say they're 25th or 26th in defensive rebounding. And I think a guy like Christian Wood is really important in that specific department. Is there any update on how far he is out from a return?
So he's coming up on his 2-week reevaluation period. It sounds like he should be back within the next week or so. But I'm hesitant with the Lakers because Cam Reddish was a game time decision coming into that Warriors game out of the break, and then he missed the next 3 games. So, like, we've seen this where guys are set to be reevaluated, and then we don't hear updates, or their reevaluation gets pushed back, or they're a game time decision, and then they miss the next few games. So, like, this is all kind of up in the air, but it does seem like Christian, he wasn't expected to be out for more than like 2 to 3 weeks. We're almost at the 2-week mark. So I expect him back sometime by next week. But again, I'm hesitant to put a firm timetable on it just because the Lakers have been pretty cryptic with their injury updates.
Yeah. And at least at this particular point in time, like, Jackson Hayes is playing. I mean, he's not getting as much of an opportunity as I would like to see him get, but Jackson Hayes is playing well enough that it's not like they have some sort of significant, vacancy there that's causing them to roll out lineups that are completely physically incapable of contending. But I do think he'd be a useful option. And, he's one of those guys that, like, a lot of the time that he's played this year alongside LeBron and AD, it's looked pretty good. And then he just hasn't had too much of an opportunity. And so I'd like to see him get healthy and get a chance to kind of crack into the rotation again. On the Denver game, I had a frustrating night that night. I didn't think that Darvin was the reason they lost to the Nuggets, but I would say that they lost because LeBron and AD got outplayed in the clutch time again. That said, against a team like Denver that's so much better than the Lakers, I thought that they kind of played with an arm tied behind their back down the stretch by leaving one of their best and most important players on the bench. I would imagine that there was some frustration surrounding that specific incident, probably from D'Lo's camp, probably from some of the other guys in the locker room who felt like he would have given them a better chance to win. Is everyone just kind of moving on from that, dusting it under the rug, or is there any sort of like lingering doubt or frustration surrounding this coaching staff and their ability to get this team to the promised land?
So I didn't hear about any specific frustration with D'Lo not closing the game from anyone within the locker room. I did hear from talking to people around the team that they felt D'Lo should have closed the game over Cam, and that was pretty obvious. I think from the coaching staff's perspective and their pushback would have been he started 5 for 7, had 13 points, played really well in the first half. To me, that was probably his best half against Denver if you're looking at all 8 games. But I don't think he played in the last regular season matchup. So 7 games for him against Denver. with these two current rosters. But that third quarter he had was kind of classic Western Conference Finals D'Lo, and you want 1 for 6, or 1 from 6 after starting 5 for 7. Only had 4 points, and I think for the Lakers there was some fear of just him kind of not rising up to the moment in the fourth quarter. And again, I think Cam obviously didn't play well, so it makes that decision look worse. But I think from the Lakers' perspective, they felt that third quarter kind of pushed them away from going back to D'Lo in the fourth. Now, what I will say is, I heard about frustration within the locker room in terms of the defensive game plan and their inability to beat Denver in now basically 8 straight clutch games, and Denver just continuing to run the same sets, the Lakers being aware of the same sets, and LA having no answer to that. And part of that, of course, is personnel, and part of that's on the players. But in some people's opinions, part of that's also on the coaching staff and their inability to figure out Denver's offense and figure out ways to slow it. And I think there were some moments during that run that Denver went on in the fourth quarter where the Lakers maybe could have called the timeout a little bit sooner to kind of regroup, reset, and say, hey, like this is our plan of attack against their offense. We know that Anthony Davis has been very vocal about they go to these Peja actions and they completely change their offense over the last 5 to 6 minutes. We know it's coming, but we still haven't figured out a way to stop it. Darvin Ham talked about it before the game. And the fact that they continue to lose in the same way, I do think there is some frustration with the Denver matchup specifically, and some questioning of, can we beat this team? And so I think that's the lingering thing. Like even talking to Cam Reddish at shoot around yesterday before the Thunder game, he got a little frustrated. There were several Denver questions in a row, and he was like, why are we still talking about Denver? We're playing OKC tonight. And you could just tell like it's a bit of a sore subject with this group of, it bothers them that they haven't been able to beat this team over the last couple of years, or going on about a year now. So I think it's something that, who knows? We could get a 1-8 matchup with the Lakers and the Nuggets, and some of these questions have to be answered sooner than later. But Denver is the roadblock for them right now, and they still haven't figured out, I think, a clear answer in terms of who are our 5 guys in this matchup and how are we going to defend the Jokic Murray 2-man game. And until they solve those two problems, I think Denver just clearly has their number, and that's a very advantageous matchup for them.
As it pertains to Cam Reddish, I almost feel bad for him because it's like he's being set up to fail. He's being put into a really high leverage, like difficult job that high level NBA players struggle with from time to time. And here's the thing, like kind of similar to the Taurean Prince thing, where he's been kind of used in a significantly larger role than he has for the most part of his NBA career. That's kind of the issue here with Cam. Cam has been a somewhat of a failed lottery pick in the sense that he hasn't been able to live up to expectations. To me, he is very much a developmental prospect. He is a guy that you give opportunities in the middle portions of games for maybe a shift per half, maybe even less than that. He's a guy that you're working with a ton behind the scenes with skill development and trying to see if maybe you can squeeze more of his potential out of him. And he is being put into a significant role on a serious basketball team. That is a situation where more often than not, he's going to fail to live up to expectations. And so I honestly feel bad for him because he's just being miscast. And that to me was the most frustrating part of that Denver game, was like, there are going to be times, there might even be a time in this playoff run where it's like, man, we're just a little too slow for this particular group. We might need to close with Austin out or close with D'Lo out and go with another wing. But that should look like something like a Vando in that lineup, or maybe Taurean Prince is at the 2 because of a specific length or size matchup, or maybe that's even Vando and Rui on the floor at the same time. It would be for another really good player. It'd be for another one of the Lakers' top 6 guys. It wouldn't be for a developmental project. And that's where it just, I feel like I genuinely feel bad for him, because like now Cam Reddish has to sit and get questioned about how he didn't do a good enough job against Denver. And it's like, bro, he's being set up to fail. Like, that's a really difficult spot to be put in. So I kind of felt bad for him. On the defensive game plan side, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, like, I don't think Darvin is up to the tactical challenge. So, like, a lot of this, I really do think LeBron and AD have to cede more control, be more vocal, be more willing to fight for what they believe is the best part of or their best strategy for any specific defensive matchup. They do a lot of communicating on the floor already. And that's the thing. Like, I want LeBron and AD to be like, hey, AD, you got to guard Jokic. And then put me on AG and put Rui over here, or whatever it is you need to do to move it around. I want them to kind of take some more of that responsibility, because at the end of the day, like, just sitting around and letting Darvin make those types of decisions, him kind of overcoaching this year has been a big part of why they've been mediocre compared to their potential. He was the one right after the in-season tournament that ditched everything that got them the in-season tournament win, and then they promptly went 3-10. He is the one that in a lot of these cases is ignoring guys that can make shots on the perimeter and letting them get into a rhythm. There needs to be, in my opinion, more of a assertive approach from LeBron James and Anthony Davis on that side of things. Moving on to the standings. So Denver is red hot coming out of the break. Clippers are a little cold. I think there's just as much potential that Denver could be the 1 seed when all of this is done as it could be Minnesota or Oklahoma City. But in all likelihood, the play-in teams are going to be running into one of Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Denver, or the Clippers. And so I want to talk about which of those teams the Lakers fare well against and which teams they wouldn't potentially in a series. Let's start with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So how would you feel if the Lakers cracked into the play-in and caught Minnesota in the first round, obviously without home court advantage? How would you feel about that matchup?
I'd feel good. I'd feel like, honestly, before last night, I was really debating whether I felt better about the Lakers facing OKC or Minnesota. And last night confirmed to me that OKC is just the better matchup. It's, clear as day in my opinion. But I think Minnesota, to me, it's more of a battle of strengths, where Minnesota has a giant front court, obviously. And on the one hand, that can give the Lakers problems, but on the other hand, I think they don't have the same advantages that they do against, say, the Clippers, right? We've seen them overwhelm the Clippers with their size and their length, and they can't do that to the same level against the Lakers, because the Lakers, obviously, when they're playing big, and this is assuming they're not going with Torian at the 4 with 3 guards, if they're relatively, basically healthy, and you have the normal front court of AD, LeBron, Rui, Vando, and then one of Christian or Jackson, and you're kind of going with those 5 guys for basically all your playoff minutes, I don't see Minnesota just like pushing them around. And I think AD has had success against Rudy Gobert in the past. Cat, I think with his shooting, that is a bit of an X factor, that if he just has a really good shooting series, I think he's the type of player that could exploit some of what the Lakers are trying to do defensively. But for the most part, like, I don't think AD and LeBron are afraid of Rudy. I think they've both had their levels of success against him over the last few years, and more so in the Utah matchups. But even again, the Lakers have played Minnesota close a couple times in Minnesota. I think they're looking forward to the game coming up here in LA. So I look at it, and to me, it just comes down to, if you're looking at those 4 teams, right? You got Shai, who's an MVP candidate. And one of the best ISO scorers in the league. You got the Clippers with their star trio of Kawhi, James Harden, and Paul George. And then you got Denver with the most unstoppable 2-man game we've seen in years in Jokic and Murray. And against the Lakers, it's basically Kobe and Shaq against the Lakers. But then you have Minnesota with Anthony Edwards. And I love Anthony Edwards. I think he's a borderline top 10 guy. But if I'm picking the number one option I'd rather face in the playoffs among those 4 teams, it's Anthony Edwards by a long shot. And I just think that the Lakers, yes, he's athletic, he's explosive, he is the type of guy that can give them problems in a series. But I think there's a pretty good chance that LeBron and AD could be the 2 best players in that series, at least 2 of the top 3, of course. But there's a chance they could just outplay Anthony Edwards collectively. And I personally, I think it's, and Minnesota is they don't have a great third option. The shooting can come and go with them. Like the crunch time offense isn't great. So like I just look at that matchup of if it's a bunch of close games, like I trust the Lakers' ability to execute against this Minnesota team more so than I trust Minnesota's ability to execute. And I think it's another matchup where the Lakers could win it in like 6 or 7 games despite not having home court advantage.
Yeah, when I look at the matchups, I do like some of the matchups in Lakers' favor. So, for instance, if you think about the Lakers on offense, AD has always had his way with Rudy Gobert. He just is good at getting him out of position. His size and length doesn't really bother AD all that much. I like that matchup. In all likelihood, if we imagine the healthy version of the Lakers, it's going to be Jared Vanderbilt starting at the 3. In that environment, and they're most likely going to put Karl Towns on Jared Vanderbilt and basically have him roam and be the low man. Now, the Lakers can combat that in their 5-out offense by using Vanderbilt as a screener a lot and basically bringing Cat into screening actions. You're probably going to get Jaden McDaniels on LeBron. I'm curious to see if LeBron could physically overwhelm Jaden in some ways just because of his strength. Where I like it for the Lakers is the backcourt piece. You're probably taking Ant and putting him on D'Angelo Russell. And for the record, Ant is the exact type of perimeter defender that gives D'Lo all sorts of issues. And I think there'd be some problems there. But this is where you kind of run out of bodies a little bit. Mike Conley is going to end up on Austin Reeves. And I think you could end up having quite a bit of success in pick and roll, kind of having Austin initiate just to get the defense in rotation. Once they're in rotation, it doesn't really matter who's guarding who. Everyone's chasing, and it's about attacking closeouts. And so I kind of that configuration is where I could see the Lakers having some success. On the other end of the floor, where it gets tricky is I really do think there is a pattern with Minnesota where you can bait them into their worst tendencies, especially in the half court. You mentioned their clutch offense. This was before last night's games, but they were 10th worst, I should say, in the NBA in clutch offense, only a 105 offensive rating in those settings. Their clutch offense has been a huge issue down the stretch of multiple games as of late. They just recently lost another one to the Clippers late, just recently lost one before that, I believe to the Kings, if I remember correctly. They've had consistent issues on that end of the floor. And one of the things the Bucks demonstrated is you can actually run a comically deep drop coverage against them, because Anthony Edwards is not a good enough pull-up jump shooter to burn you. And Mike Conley is a little too passive. Like, he can burn that coverage, but he's not the guy that likes to take 20, 25 shots in a game. He's a little bit on the passive end. And so I could just see the Lakers preying on Minnesota's half-court defense issues or half-court offense issues by just putting AD on Gobert and sagging way off of him. My guess is they'd probably keep LeBron on Jaden McDaniels and sag way off of him too. And then they would just have they'd have Jared Vanderbilt on Ant chasing over the top, and then they try to get Mike Conley to beat him. And I do think there's some potential there. The one thing I would say is specifically Minnesota does have the interior size with Gobert, especially if AD is not shooting particularly well, to cause some issues for them at the rim. And we all know that LeBron in particular at this phase of his career against elite rim protectors can sometimes his game becomes more jump shot dependent. And so I just think they're more physically capable of hanging with the Lakers, which makes it more of a coin flip to me than the Thunder. But to put it simply, I absolutely think the Lakers can beat the Timberwolves. I think they're a beatable matchup for them. We talked about the Thunder already. Let's talk about the Clippers. So the Clippers, they have shown that they can do some damage to the Lakers by switching and kind of slowing down some of their offense, but they have some size limitations that the Lakers can prey on. How do you feel about a potential Laker playoff series against the Clippers?
So I think it's similar to the Thunder in terms of the Lakers being able to overwhelm them with their size and their physicality. But I think unlike the Thunder, the Clippers just have more weapons offensively. And I think I'm less confident in this matchup. I'll be upfront with it. Like I think I would favor the Clippers in probably 6 or 7 games over the Lakers if these two teams were facing each other. Like I think Kawhi, we've seen it. Like he's one of the few guys that's been able to match LeBron in a playoff series. It's really, I guess, Kawhi and KD are the two guys, like from a historical perspective, that have been able to go toe to toe in a series with LeBron. And I think James Harden is properly slotted as a number 3 which to me, I think you can kind of live with an off night or even an off series, from James Harden, just because of the collective firepower that they have. I think Zubac has done an underrated job, matching up with AD and just kind of holding his own. I thought missing Paul George and Zubac those were two of their five best players that they were missing in that last matchup. So, and then we've seen, like, I mean, even with incredible fourth quarter, incredible comeback, and that was one of the Lakers' best quarters of the season, probably LeBron's best quarter of the season. But the first three quarters were a bit troubling. And we have seen, I mean, that was the second time the Clippers got a massive lead against the Lakers and then kind of just, tricked it away. So I, on the one hand, like, you could look at it from a positive perspective, but I also think there are some trends there where the Clippers' ability to switch, their just collective size on the perimeter and athleticism, and then just the different ways that they could attack you offensively, be it James Harden pick and rolls, or Paul George or Kawhi ISOs on the wing, Kawhi posting. Like, I just think the Lakers kind of run out of defensive options ultimately against the Clippers. So I think it would be close. And look, the Lakers won the season series 3-1. So it's not like I don't think the Clippers have their number the way that they have had it in the past. But within the context of some of that, I think the Clippers have, it's much closer to like being a 2-2 season series or even a 3-1 in the Clippers' favor than it is just a flat out, like, Lakers have dominated the matchup. And I think the Lakers, like, LeBron has always done well against the Clippers. He's always been able to, they've struggled containing him, and he gets downhill relatively easily against them. AD's been a little bit more up and down in those matchups, and that might ultimately be the swing factor of, like, can he just dominate Zoo or Zoo? We've seen Zoo have these like 18-20 rebound games against AD and like hold his own. So again, like, I look at that as maybe, how much can AD dominate that matchup head to head? But Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, it's just a lot of firepower. I honestly think that they might benefit from not having Russ as well, depending on what happens with his hand. Like, he had not been playing as well recently. I thought earlier in the season in some of those matchups, like, he didn't play well against the Lakers and helped the Lakers get back in games in like the second quarter and stuff. So, like, not having Russ, I also think benefits the Clippers in a way. And I think that the Clippers, I would favor them, but it would be closer to a coin flip. But I would give the Clippers like a 55-45 edge.
Yeah, I would pick the Clippers as well, probably by a slightly larger margin. This specific type of team, I think, is the Nuggets are the kryptonite for everybody in the league, just because Jokic is the best player in the world and they have a perfectly constructed top five. But in terms of like strictly based on matchups, the Clippers to me are the perfect type of team to give the Lakers issues, which is actually ironic that they beat them the way that they have. But you correctly pointed out in those two wins, the two that I'm thinking of, because there was one earlier in the season, if I remember correctly, when when James Harden just got traded for, and I think a couple guys were out of the lineup that game. But in the last two, they have shown that the Clippers can really cause problems for the Lakers offense with switching. Specifically, they switch with size. They switch with bigger, stronger wings. And so it puts much more of the responsibility on LeBron and AD to be super physically aggressive. And it comes easy to them in the Thunder matchup because they just have such a wild size advantage that they can inflict that relatively easily. That said, in the Clippers games that they've won, it has been physical advantages that the Lakers have been able to inflict on the Clippers to get it done, but it's been these short bursts at the end of games after 3 quarters of them not doing that. And the main reason why is like D'Angelo Russell can't beat switches against the Clippers. Austin Reeves can't beat switches against the Clippers. Spencer Dinwiddie hasn't really had too much of an opportunity yet to demonstrate that. I think he's a guy that they could go to there in some situations, but the Clippers have really good guard defenders, so I'm not even sure necessarily that is an option that they could go to. It 100% comes down to, can LeBron bully his way? Can AD bully his way on the offensive glass? Like that last Clippers game, they were getting killed by the switching all night long until LeBron started bombing threes over Daniel Tice. And then when he did that, he started drawing double teams, which then got the defense in rotation, and they were able to play out of that with their offensive skill. But that's a lot to ask for LeBron to hit, 4 or 5 pull-up threes in a playoff series 4 times out of 7. And so I just think it would just put a lot of physical ask on LeBron and AD to do that to the Clippers. And so that specific matchup causes me a little bit of concern. Zubac in particular, too, he's one of those guys that can just bury AD on the offensive glass. And like that's a matchup that he's kind of struggled with a little bit relative to the way he deals with a lot of the other bigs around the league. And so I think we can agree, like, if there was a perfect outcome, it would be the Lakers get up to call it the 7 seed. And somehow it shakes out that the Nuggets get the 1 seed and the Clippers get the 4, which, by the way, is very much on the table. And then the Lakers end up getting a Thunder team in the first round. And then after that, they get to go play a Minnesota team in the second round. And then the Clippers and the Nuggets have to beat the hell out of each other in the conference semis. And you get one of them in the conference finals. And hopefully by that point, it's late May and Jared Vanderbilt is back in shape and feeling good. And Jared Vanderbilt has not played in any of the Denver Nuggets matchups this year. That's the one big thing. Like now, like last year in their 4-out offense, Vanderbilt could be ignored a little bit easier. This year, because they're using him as a screener so much more, I actually think it kind of is an interesting wrinkle in that series. And that would be potentially the little bit of silver lining that you cling to is like Jared Vanderbilt could be the difference maker in a Denver Nuggets series. Now, I don't think that's the case, but if you're a Lakers optimist, that's what you're clinging to. And so there is a pathway there. And here's the thing, when you're a flawed team, when you're not of Denver's ilk, matchups are everything. Matchups are literally everything. And so for them to catch either Minnesota or Oklahoma City in the first round, I think is going to be the biggest indicator of their capability when we get into the postseason. Do you have any concern about them in the play-in tournament? Like if they, like I'm still worried about them being able to go on the road to Dallas or on the road to Sacramento, on the road to Phoenix, on the road to New Orleans. I'm worried about that. New Orleans is probably the one team in that group that I'm completely unconcerned with. But like, I don't know, like Sacramento comes to town tomorrow. They're speed guards. They're not, the kind of shifty guards that Oklahoma City had. They're speed guards. And I'm actually worried about tomorrow night's matchup. Are you worried at all about the Lakers' ability just to get out of the play-in tournament?
Yeah. And to me, it really comes down to their seeding. Like if this team is the 10 seed and they have to win 2 road play-in games, I think there's a pretty decent shot they don't come out of the play-in tournament. Now, if they're the 9 seed and they have home court advantage, at least in that first matchup, I really think it might be as simple as like, do they have home court advantage in the play-in versus, do they don't? And now I'm with you. I think New Orleans is it's a good matchup for them. Sacramento has been a bad matchup for them the last couple of years. I think. But with the way Sacramento has played though over the last couple months, like I'm kind of like I'm really interested to see how the Lakers handle the next 2 games against them over the next week or so, just because both are essentially must wins. Given the Kings are a game and a half ahead of them, 3 in the loss column, but like the Lakers can control their destiny a bit here. If they can beat the Kings twice in the next week, that brings in a team that they could potentially jump here over the next few weeks. And now that you get into that 7-8 matchup, which is a lot more advantageous just because if you lose that first game, all right, well, you have a second shot to get in as the 8 seed. So too. I think for them, like, and at home. So I think for them, like, I look at New Orleans and Sacramento as teams I would pick them against for sure. Phoenix and Dallas, I'm a little bit more concerned on. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the season. I was very high on Phoenix. I've dropped a little bit on them, but I'm still keeping my Phoenix stock. I still think that's a team none of the top seeds are going to want to see in round 1, just with that. Like if they can get healthy, and that's a big if, I understand that. But if they can get healthy, the offense has just been so great with those 3 on the floor that I mean, personally, I don't want to see Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a playoff series. So those 2 in a 1-game setting, like it could be a game like we've seen with the Lakers and Suns this year where those guys just don't shoot the ball well, and they're very jump shot reliant. And if it's not falling, then I think the Lakers can overwhelm them. But if they are falling and Nurkic is holding his own against AD and like some of the similar things we saw in that last matchup, like that's a pretty tough matchup, especially with Phoenix likely having home court advantage in a potential play-in game against the Lakers. So Dallas I'm closer to 50-50 on. Like the Lakers are 1-2 against them, but those have relatively been close games for the most part. So, but I don't want to see Luka in a play-in situation if I'm the Lakers either. So like the West is just brutal, man. If you go like 1 through 10, 1 through 9, like every team you can make an argument for why they could go on a run or why they could lose in the play-in or the first round. I think the Lakers are probably the poster child of that just because of the ups and downs we've seen this season. But I definitely think, especially if they're playing on the road, there's a shot that they don't make it out of the play-in. And I do trust LeBron and AD in a one-game setting. I just think with the way this team has performed on the road, they do have some big wins. But they also have, I mean, they're under 500 on the road and it's been pretty stark for most of the season. It's kind of, are they home or are they on the road? So to me, it really comes down to matchups and whether they're home, whether they're on the road. But I do think there's a chance that they just don't make it out.
Yeah, 22-10 at home, 12-19 on the road. Now, I'm of the opinion that I would want to be no lower than 7th heading into this. Simply because of the fact that the Lakers have some familiarity with that 7-8 game too. They've won it twice last year and then back in 2021. LeBron is a guy I really trust in that one game setting, but at the role players, they're young role players that we keep thinking about this. It's like LeBron and AD, they're both, a little bit old in their, AD is not that old, but he's old compared to most of his peers because of the injuries that he's dealt with. LeBron obviously being 39. The rest of the team is a lot of young kids, like relative to the rest of the league. And so I think that's why they struggle a little bit when they go on the road. So like, I think getting up there is important. They're actually only 3 games back from the 5 seed. Like that's the other element of this. But at the same time, like it's still in play. But like I think the 7 seed would be ideal because I would want to face Minnesota or Oklahoma City before I'd want to face that Clippers team. All right, Jovan. So you actually just recently launched a new podcast. So I thought you could take a second here to tell us all about all the new stuff you've got going on.
Yeah, so I'm taking a page out of Jason's book, and I launched my own YouTube channel just at Jovan Buha. So I've been doing videos there for about 6 weeks now. Started with some vlogging, been doing post-game reactions now after every game. Started right before the All-Star break. And then I also just launched Buha's Block, which is my new podcast. You can check that out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. First episode was with Austin Reeves and Trent Swaim. That's his partner with Hillbilly Bogey. So we talk about Hillbilly Bogey, golf a little bit. Then we get into the Lakers season, Austin's 3rd season. I thought he had some interesting comments about, kind of evaluating his play and how he feels like he's been thrown into a bunch of different situations and he's tried to make the best of it. So definitely check that out if you've not done so already.
Yeah, Jovan's doing great work over there. Got to check out that Austin Reeves interview. Also, those post-game reactions. He's going after every Lakers game. Obviously, we only do a small handful of them. So for that instant reaction content, not a better place for you guys to go. Make sure you guys support Jovan's work. As always, we appreciate you guys. We are going to be back tomorrow morning with the instant reaction to one of the games from tonight, and then we'll do a mailbag, and then we're also going live for, I want to say, Bucks Warriors, I think is the game tomorrow night, and then we're doing Nuggets Celtics on Thursday night, which should be a preview of the NBA Finals, in my opinion. All right. As always, we appreciate you guys. We will see you tomorrow.